Hi, welcome to the Business Class ESL Breakroom. We're a company of passionate language trainers and coaches. We're here to share ideas to improve our skills and strengthen the training community. Come in for some inspiration, leave with tips to apply to your sessions today. Hi, and welcome to the ESL Breakroom. Today's podcast is a special one because today we are veering away from all things ESL training as such and dipping our toes into something I can say is ESL adjacent, but maybe a wee bit scary for some of us, but will be a whole lot beneficial for all of us. Let me explain. Today on the ESL Breakroom Podcast, we have Nicola Prentis. Like you and me, Nicola has been and still is an ESL professional, trainer and materials writer who has worked all around the world teaching English and developing materials for publishing houses across Europe. You've probably used some of them. But unlike many of us, Nicola has bravely ventured into what was unknown to her, but is now using her educator skill set to share that very thing with the ESL community at large. And that thing is investing. Yep. Today on the ESL Breakroom, we're going to talk about money. By investing, we don't mean high stakes, high stress, volatile investing, but rather passive investing, low risk investing that yes, even you and me on ESL freelancer or modest salaried incomes can take part in. So welcome, Nicola. Thank you for agreeing to talk with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And so first of all, would you mind sharing with us how you've kind of gone from a financially struggling ESL professional who self-described as not confident or knowledgeable about personal finance to someone who's now comfortable and even passionate about demystifying it for others?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing I should say, because your summary of the things that I've done is actually quite comprehensive. So the first thing I should say is when I moved into from teaching to materials writing, I went from something that I did have training in because obviously I'd done a CELTA course and I'd had a master's. I did a master's in the ELT. And so I went from something that I'd been trained in to something that actually I didn't have any training in because I didn't do a journalism degree or an English literature degree or anything like that. So I was a self-taught writer. And, then I started earning money from that. And I think in a lot of ways that paved the way for me to become a self-taught something else, because, you build a load of knowledge. And then because you've already got that background in education and then the materials writing. So the obvious next step to me was, well, this actually is really interesting. Why don't I just teach it to other people? Because it combined the things that I already liked, which is the teaching and the writing, because you're creating a program, and it allowed me to just kind of pass that on to other people who I know these people, I know because they're me. I've just got that little bit of extra knowledge now because I've gone away and I've learned about something. And the thing with investing is that it is hard to learn it by yourself because there's so much information. And I spent 6 months teaching myself, and I didn't even know what it was I needed to learn before I started learning it. And then I would learn a load of stuff and then be like, oh, okay, I see. It's like looking back behind you and seeing, oh, that was the path, because I see now that I've taken it, but I didn't know what it was when I was just standing at the beginning of it. So it was really that.
It's a brave step you took because it's an intimidating topic. Why do you think ESL people are particularly intimidated by the topic, if we could say that?
Well, I mean, it's definitely true. There's a whole money mindset thing that permeates TEFL and maybe wider education, but I don't know the wider education community like I know my community, which is TEFL. So I think the thing is that you start out as a kind of traveler, adventurer, backpacker. You are expecting to have all the benefits of living in another country and be able to have a job and everything there, but you're not thinking about money. You're just thinking about, how can I experience this place? How can I learn the language? How can I get to know the people? How can I explore the culture? And a lot of people fall into teaching that way, and then they get stuck there because it's, they maybe don't speak the language well enough to be able to do any other kind of job. And by that time, actually, you probably do care about teaching. but you've started off on something that was never going to pay you very much money. And somewhere along the line, you accept, oh, this is the norm. This is the price I pay for the lifestyle that I get to have, and you tell yourself that your lifestyle is great. And it seems like it is because your friends at home are maybe working 12-hour days in offices. They're commuting for an hour a day and you're not doing any of that. But actually, a lot of the time you're running a split shift and you do have to commute, but you have to travel around to classes within a city and you don't get paid for that time. You don't get paid for your prep time. You don't get paid for all this stuff. And actually your life does look a little bit like your friends at home, but somehow you've convinced yourself that because you tend to spend all your money on experiences and not things like your friends at home seem to be, or at least this is how I saw it. And they've got 2 weeks holiday a year and you feel like you're on holiday the whole time. And somewhere along the way, you just kind of forget that money is a thing and you don't realize that you're going to stay at the exact same financial, you're just going to stay on an equilibrium that's not equal in it or balanced in any way. And I think that's what starts it off. And I used to feel a bit superior to those people at home, be like, yeah, they just care about money and career. And I can look at my life and I'd go to another country next year and everybody would be like, oh, you're so lucky. And I'd be like, it's not luck. I designed my life this way. And I would feel like I was winning. But the reality is those people now own houses. They have a financial freedom that I just didn't have. Yeah. And I think and I think the industry itself kind of trains you not to ask for more money, not to expect more than you're getting, to be grateful that you get your job back in September after the summer. And I think all of that just adds to a mindset that maybe people who come into TEFL have got that leaning anyway, because you're generally talking about people who are coming from an arts background rather than a science one, rather than a business one. Or you've got people that are taking a break because they got completely burnt out by corporate lifestyle. Or, I used to meet doctors, lawyers, accountants who just had enough and turned to TEFL. So you've got a load of people that either running away from the money thing or were never that way inclined.
I'm just laughing and smiling because you were just so speaking to my experience.
Right.
So many people I knew, and somewhere along the way that morphs from being in your 20s and adventuring to being in your 30s and wanting to establish families. And yeah, you watch all your expat friends with packages that you meet move on to other countries. So what were some of your first ahas around money in investing that prompted you to take action? Like, how did you go from being there, but actually then recognizing it and then taking the next step? Because that's not what everyone does.
No, the big light bulb, which it just, for some people they just be like, yes, so what? But for me, it was a real moment, was where I realized rich people make money from their money. They're not working for it. And they might have worked for it in the past, but there comes a point where money just earns money. And I realized, well, you can do that with small amounts as well. And it was that was the light bulb that really set me off on going, I need to find out how to do this. And I didn't know what this was. And that was the thing that I had to find out, like what is it that you can do with your money? Because there was no way I was going to be buying a house. No bank would give me a mortgage. I didn't have enough. I had savings, but not enough for a deposit for a house anyway, even if I could have got the mortgage. So I had to do something. So that was the light bulb moment. But also, my sister had been prodding away at me because she's got a proper job with a pension and all that, and a house and all that security. And she was always just going, but what about pension? What about this? What about that? And I was like, I don't know. And that was, like you said, that was okay in my 20s. It was okay in my 30s. And then it wasn't. So those were the two big sort of pushes, I think. And then the next light bulb was just not a light bulb, because that's too sudden. It was the slow dawning realization of like, oh, this is not that hard. This is not that complicated. Anybody can do it.
That is, I think, the thing that we're all yearning to get to realize for ourselves that that's the thing. So what were the very first steps you took?
The first thing was really boring, because a lot of this stuff is in quotes boring, but because I'm from the UK, the social security system there is called national insurance, and I knew half knew that you can pay into that system when you are abroad, because I had topped up years, because sometimes you've paid some of your contributions that year, and if you don't finish them off, then you lose that year and it doesn't count towards your state pension. And so I went back and I found out, how do you find out how much you paid in? What's the phone number to call somebody to make them up? And I made up some years to mean that those years weren't just going to be wasted. And that was the first thing I did. And I was just calling my sister, like leaving her audio messages every day, like, because I'd done my homework. But it took me a while to work that out.
Yeah.
And so once I'd done that, I was like, okay. And I thought that I was going to learn, well, because I thought that investing was trading. And this is what most people get wrong. So I found a really good, I haven't completed it, but it is good, a free online course about trading from the Pips Academy, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. And I got to a certain point with that. And then I stopped being able to understand it. And I couldn't get any further with it because it's hard. And I felt like I needed a teacher who was going to help me through and have that, somebody to ask when I didn't get it, because they're very good resources. But for me, it was too difficult. I've got a background in philosophy. Yeah. I wasn't maybe the right person for doing something unassisted like that. And then again, I was like, right, okay, it's not that, so it must be something else. But that was the thing I tried first. And as I teach on the course, trading is a whole other thing. It's not investing. It's a full-time job. It's difficult. Most people lose their money. It's not something that the ordinary person can be doing or should be doing. If you want to do it, great, but you've really got to understand what it is. And it's basically professional gambling, hoping that the odds are stacked in your favor because you have learned about technical analysis, you are reading the stock market reports, and you are really working at it.
Yeah, I love the way you talk about this. I've been through a lot of your materials and researching, and I realize that you really are very upfront. You say, I'm not going to make you rich, I'm going to make you informed. And that's really clear and really important that you say that.
Yeah. And not rich, but better off than you were. Because I never want to use the word guarantees. Lots of things can happen in the world. But if you are putting your money aside into long-term investments and you've got 10, 20 years to throw at it, it's highly unlikely that you're going to come out of that with less money than you put in, as long as you follow the basic principles of investing. And a lot of that is psychology, knowing, understanding how this thing works, and then disassociating yourself from it and just letting it do its thing. That's really important, because you will lose money if you panic.
Yeah. What I love also about what you offer, you have a whole palette of offerings that are about accompanying someone or teaching them how to do it themselves, which
definitely
I might have had this realization a few years ago, but then I never knew who to trust really. And I didn't want to just, like you talk about, give all my money to an advisor who I don't know if I could trust. And so I've done nothing. And that's not where I want to stay.
Yeah. It's that paralysis from, who do you trust? Can you do it yourself? Yes, you absolutely can. And it's not necessarily that you can't trust financial advisors. If you get recommendations from people, then they're not going to steal your money, and you would choose somebody who was regulated so that if something did happen, they'd be able to rescue you. But, I don't know if you've watched, what's the thing called, the Madoff documentary about him? No. He was trusted by everybody and he completely scammed. So it's more the danger of financial advisors. It is probably not that they're going to rip you off. That's probably not what's going to happen to you, but it is that they're going to make money regardless of whether you do. And they're going to eat away at your profits because they're taking a chunk of it that doesn't sound like much, but when it's over 20 years and they're taking it, it's eating away at what you could have taken. And the figures are astounding, actually, how much less well off you are by having somebody else handle it for you.
That's very eye-opening. I think that alone makes it really valuable, what you're putting out. But, we can't forget that this topic is so laden with lots of mental blocks, lots of money thoughts and issues that come from our programming as kids. How did you persist when that came up for you, or if it did, or maybe you did make a few mistakes here and there in the beginning? How did you keep going?
Yeah, so I did make mistakes, but I almost could see that I was making the mistakes as I was doing it. And it's all to do with seeing some kind of account. So I've got various different accounts, seeing some of them go down, which is a temporary thing. There was a particular thing happened in China. to do with the construction industry. And I was like, oh my God. And I told myself a little story about how, actually, I'd rather that my investments were spread out between this kind of account and this kind of account. So I pulled half of the money out of this account that had been affected by the Chinese thing and put it in something else. And I put it in something that was much higher risk. Ooh. It was, so I crystallized the losses was my first mistake. If I just left it alone, it did recover. And that's what you should never do, never react. So I reacted, crystallized the losses. And then the biggest fault was that I put it in something that was higher risk. And that has subsequently gone on to do worse than it would have done if I'd left it where it was. But that's the thing. It's because I didn't understand what's low risk, what's high risk, what are these things. So that was my big learning moment. And I've had learning moments since then, which is that I see what my psychology is. So I will go to do a sensible thing, and I'll go and do a slightly riskier thing instead. So I understand about myself. I can't change that about myself. And I think you can't think I'm going to change myself. It's more like, okay, I'm going to be aware what my patterns are, and then I'm going to put in systems to mean that I can't do that. So I have as many things automated as possible. And I understand about myself that if I decide to do something manually, I'm probably going to make a spontaneous choice. So I'd stop allowing myself to make so many spontaneous choices, because that's more realistic than me going, oh, I'm going to change my nature.
Very interesting. It's very psychological as well.
Yeah, it's huge. Most of this is psychological. And I say this to people on the course. I'm like, you're going to learn, because the course is 6 weeks, right? Only 6 weeks. And you're going to learn all the stuff that you think is difficult about investing, and that's easy. And the psychology stuff, you're still going to be learning this a year from now, because it's people. That's how complicated we are. And the money mindset stuff, exactly like you said, it comes from your childhood. Yeah. And it pretty much by now it's wired in. The only thing that you can do is be aware of it and then consciously decide to take a different path. But it's better if you really take the decisions out of your own hands, because you can't escape that stuff. How you think about money, and everybody's different. And even somebody with the same background will come out with a different makeup from it, because we're too complicated to all be like, oh, A happens and then you come out person B. It's not like that. Yeah, it's A happens and you might come out A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but it will be because of that thing. Still, the cause is definite, but it's just had a different result in you. Yeah,
it's very deep rooted. And so, yeah, we're talking about your course, but maybe we haven't mentioned it. That's what we're here to talk about as well. You are putting together materials that help people learn. You've got a lot of fun free stuff I saw on the website, mini tests and health checks and really informative stuff. But right now you're preparing a course, a 6-week course. You want to tell us a little bit more about it so we have a better idea?
Yeah, so I've actually run that course 6 times now. So
great.
It's quite a well-oiled machine, I like to think. So it's called the Chilled Investor. And it took me a while to come up with the name, but because I wanted to encapsulate that thing of like, this isn't hard. This isn't something you're going to stress about. You're not going to stress about the course. You're not going to stress after the course. Investing just is a chilled out, relaxed thing. And so I sensed that it would be something that wouldn't take ages to teach, but also something that couldn't just be done super fast, because people will sometimes write to me and be like, I want to do it in a weekend. And I'm like, well, you can't, because even if you squashed the 6 weeks into the weekend, you could physically get through it. But because for the majority of people, this stuff is so new, the first 4 weeks of it are input. And then because I'm an ex-TEFL person, there's plenty of vocab review, activities in the homework, reflective tasks, stuff like that, because, it's learning a new language. And like learning a new language, you can't be like, can I learn English in this weekend? No, you can't.
Right.
It's like you're going to have to go away and review stuff. And I'm never there to catch people out, but I do 3 live calls during the course in week 3, week 4, and week 6. Then that's like the end workshop. But week 3 and week 4, you can tell when people haven't been doing their homework, because they've watched the videos, because I used to deliver it live. Now it's delivered via video, which has made it much more bite-sized and shorter and manageable for people. And they they watch the video, but if they don't go away and do the homework, they haven't reviewed the concepts in the language. And again, just like your students, if you've done present perfect in class, but they didn't go away and do the stuff that you set them and practice it, then they didn't learn it. And you can tell. And so usually people then by week 4, they're like, okay, can't get away with that again.
Yeah, this is great. It's funny just to think we are now, reversing roles with our own learners. But I think this is really helpful because you do need to get the mindset. The time helps you kind of let it seep in and get familiar with talking about it, even with other people, or which is great. So yeah, you do have some free tools on the website. Do you want to mention? I'm curious about the Money Finder activity you have coming up.
Yeah, so that by the time this comes out, that will be finished. So I don't know if you still want to talk about it, but it is something that I'll repeat in some format. But it's basically, we've all got money lying around, and there are various different things that I'll explore. It's 4 different themes, and it's like, look, this is how you're going to go and find this money that's here, and this is how you're going to find this. And it's just lots of different tips and tricks and things. And some of it is classic money saving stuff. But some of it is, I just know, like, for example, a lot of people have pensions, workplace pensions that they've taken out because, I don't know, they had a job that came with a pension and it was years ago and they don't know where it is. And they're like, oh, but I hardly got any money in it. I don't know. It's like, right, we're going to go find those pensions, because if you have something that's been growing for X amount of time that you've forgotten about, I guarantee you it's worth loads more than you think it is, because it's been growing by power of the stock market. And the last 10 years of the stock market, if you take out this last year and a half, have been great. So if you opened that pension a year and a half ago, it won't look very good now. But if you opened it 10 years ago and forgot about it and can't find it, it's going to look great. So the last person who did my course, I think she realized hers was worth about £10,000 or something like that.
It's amazing.
She was amazed. So that's one of the things that we'll look at. And I've got resources of people in different countries about how you could go and find these pensions. But I'm hoping that people who participate will go and find me others, because I don't know how you do it in Greece, for example. So
yeah, that's the beauty of working in groups, that you do have people in different locations. And so do you have some feedback from people, some ahas that have been kind of things that have stuck with you from some of your learners?
Yeah, so of the free things, do you mean, or of the courses?
Either or, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Well, the free thing, the most effective thing I've done by far, which was something I just threw together in an afternoon without really thinking about it very much, was relevant only to people in the UK, but it was about the national insurance thing that I was saying to you about, because there are opportunities there to make up the payments, and most people who are living abroad don't realize that they can do this. And so I just put a step-by-step guide of exactly how to go through the process. And it means that people who've used that resource there are people who would not have had a state pension at all and now will get a full one. I mean, that's huge. At the moment, that's £185 a week, which you would get paid from the age of retirement until you die. I mean, it's just like, that's not going to be enough to live off, but it's people going from nothing to something. So I'm really happy about that one. And the other thing, the financial health check, which I know you've seen, is a little survey that people can just kind of see where they're at. But they can compare their results with, now it's 126 people that have done it prior, and I've got little graphs and things, but it's a wake-up call. The thing that people take out of that, the people who have written and said to me, is like, wow, that makes grim reading. And it does. It does. But I don't know, maybe it's helpful to people to say, okay, like, this is an industry-wide problem, but it doesn't have to be my problem anymore. I can go away and I can change a load of things. I can end up getting a better score because I will have investments, I'll have a pension sorted, I'll do this, I'll do that. So that one I think is eye-opening rather than practically useful. The practically useful thing is now go away and, learn about investing by yourself if you want. But I'll tell you that it took me 6 months and I made some mistakes. Or you can come and do my course. You can get it sorted in 6 weeks. You'll know enough to confidently go off and do it. And I think, why spend any more time? Because the block to most people is I don't know where to start. and I don't have time. So cut those two out.
So good. I find this great because you really are speaking to us very distinctly. We really, everything you talked about was so familiar, and I know I'm not alone. So
no, you're not at all.
It's really empowering,
and that is actually the key word that comes up the most in the testimonials, people saying they feel empowered, because it is this whole part of the world and part of human existence, and it's been going on for centuries, is money and financial systems. And if you don't understand them, you're locked out of so many things. And one of them is actually just the news, because there's a lot of things in the news that are going on and you don't hear them, and you kind of like, oh, it's boring, but actually it's not. It's just you didn't understand it. And again, like when you learn a language and you're sitting on the bus and you realize, oh, I can understand the people around me. You don't have to listen to what they're saying, but it's quite a nice feeling knowing that you can understand if you want to. And what happens is people start sending me, after they've done the course or once they're a certain way through it, they send me articles that they've read from normal newspapers, not like some deep analysis from the Financial Times, but from normal newspapers. And they're like, oh, I understand this. There were people talking about stuff to do with some aspect of the Trump something. It was something to do with Trump, and I can't even remember now. But they're like, oh, I understand this now. So it makes you feel more in control of your sort of place in the world, because you're not barred from this whole bit of it that becomes this white noise, but a kind of scary white noise. So
yeah, absolutely. And thank you for putting it out there, because I think it's a real service to the industry in a sense. It's a great thing. I know we don't have time, but let's delve into even the aspect of the ESL community that we tend to not be interested in money, or we put ourselves last. There's so much psychological layer to it that, why do we do that?
Helping professions, it's that, isn't it? I'm sure if my background was nursing, I'd be speaking to nurses, and I'm sure they will have the same issues, apart from the fact that they probably got workplace pensions, because that's a job that would come with that. So that does put them in a different position. But I bet that whole idea of like not doing things for the money, not being seen to care about money. I mean, look how critical the media is when nurses and doctors go on strike because they're not being paid fairly. It's like, on the one hand, you think they should be paid fairly, but they shouldn't actually act to try to get that. And teachers exactly the same. So I think it's a helping profession thing. And also there's just, like I said before, there's this, what I call like the nobility of poverty. It becomes a thing that you can not brag about exactly, but be proud of. Your ability to live on a shoestring, your ability to not care about material things, your disdain for people that spend money on stuff that is frivolous, or the queuing up, people who queue up for iPhones, like you would never do that. But you don't have to be. I think the thing that holds people back is the thought that if they start becoming interested in money, they're going to become the person who brags about the fact that they got the newest iPhone. And it isn't. People who learn about investing don't suddenly become people who flash cash around. They actually stay the same careful attitude towards money, but now it's probably because you're putting some of it aside to invest for later.
Excellent. Yeah, I think this is just such a, pardon the pun, but such a rich topic.
Yeah,
it really is. But so how can people get in touch with you, or how can they reach you if they want to find out more?
Okay, so I am active on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. It's how you contact me, I think, isn't it? So LinkedIn, just Nicola Prentis. My surname's quite unusual spelling, so it'll always come to me. And the website is chilledinvestor.com. There's a contact form on there if you want. There's information about the course on the page that says Learn to Invest. The next course is starting on May the 22nd. So by the time people are listening to this, it probably will be sold out, but get in touch with me anyway, because if there's a massive demand, then I would probably open a second cohort anyway. But the next group won't be until October. So it's May, or it's quite a long wait. So as we know, time is critical. The more time you spend waiting to learn to invest, that's just your money sitting there doing nothing. So you don't want to waste any more time. So definitely get in touch, because like I said, I could open a second group if there's enough demand for it, but also it's good to kind of get into my orbit a little bit, because getting in touch with me, getting on my mailing list, that will be what happens if you go to the website, a pop-up will come to see if you want to join the mailing list. And I find that a lot of people need to hear from me for quite a while before they feel ready to take that step. Because in the mailing list, the first thing that happens is you get a sequence explaining how I, in more detail than we've done here, like how I kind of got into investing, the realizations that I had. And then it's just me talking about things to do with that in a very non-threatening, non-jingo type of way. So you understand it and you realize, okay, this person's not going to suddenly start throwing a load of terminology at me that I can't handle. Because I didn't come from a finance background. So I'm not in there talking at a level that you won't understand, because I wouldn't have understood that.
Yeah, it's true. I think what I've read and the emails I've received is very approachable, and it's very, relatable. And that is what is so comforting and encouraging. So
great, because that's exactly what I want it to be, approachable, because I want to be approachable, and I've got, background in writing, and I used to speak at conferences and things as well. So I know how to not be intimidating. But it's that the topic as well isn't intimidating and it is approachable, because this is such general stuff. It really is. People get to the end of the course, and I think part of them is like, is that it? Like it's not as hard as they think it's going to be.
Wow. Well, excellent. That is good news for everybody. So all you trainers and teachers out there, please, if you've been intimidated like me, put my hand up, check it out. And Nicola, thank you so much for making the time with us. We really appreciate it. Okay. Take good care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us in the Business Class ESL Breakroom, the podcast designed to bring business English trainers useful ideas, inspiration, and conversation that motivates. Follow us on Instagram at business_class_language and subscribe to the ESL Breakroom playlist on Spotify, Deezer, or Apple Music for new episodes. See you next time.